we were to give it a rating on the budget, good, indifferent, bad, I guess, from that point of view, and a couple of words as to why. Anthony, I might go to you first. What are you thinking, buddy?
I thought last night we knew most of the tax reform that was coming, and probably the need for it. But I think you're right. It's the incentives bit that is quite a detractor, and not. I haven't spoke to a lot of clients in business this morning, but I think that'll be where a lot of the pain and the aggression or frustration will be. So yeah, I would say probably a 5 or a 6. I think it hits where it does on parts, but there's not that upside. And as you said earlier, we're hoping that maybe that's in 12 months' time pre-election.
Yeah, no, fair enough too. What about you, Mick? What are you thinking?
Look, I think if you were judging it on a couple of factors, one being a short-term band-aid solution, it would probably rate pretty highly, right? Because it plugs a big hole for the government right now, and in targeting those areas. But I think if you're looking at long-term structural change, well-being of the country as a whole, yeah, I think it's one of those ones that you're hoping your parents don't see when your report card comes out. You go, I hope they missed that mark on that particular subject because it didn't go too well. So, yeah, look, I think we've missed the big picture stuff here, right? At the end of the day, it's all good and well to do this redistribution and make it a little bit more equitable and all the rest of it, but we still have to have a situation where we have the massive incentives and we want to be known as the nation of doers and getting stuff done and being innovative and being entrepreneurial and the like. And I don't sense that we've nailed that part of the puzzle.
Yeah, no, fair point too. What about yourself, Lisa?
Look, I felt like it was a bit of a taster to see how the electorate reacts to to changes that might hit the bottom line. I did notice that with the capital gains tax changes, for example, they learnt their lesson from Bill Shorten's time and did put a exemption for age pension, disability pension recipients, JobKeeper recipients on the 30% minimum tax on the capital gains tax rate. So I think those sorts of elements, were learnings, I guess, for that terrible term, but from that time. So yeah, a bit of a taster, see how the electorate reacts, and then as Pat was alluding to, maybe we'll see that in those pre-election announcements or next budget as well, the reaction will be clear. If they feel like they've got more room to make the changes, then we'll see some more aggression. And if these are received poorly with the unintended consequences as we all analyse them with individual client files, then they might retreat and do little else. But fundamentally, we need structural reform, don't we? And I think a lot of our clients, as we speak to them, they're sort of aware that the bigger picture is a problem. It's not always palatable when it hits your own bottom line, of course. Of course.
And what about yourself, Pat?
Yeah, there was more losers than winners. That's what I felt. Like you're saying, Bill Shorten, he was vindicated. It was his birthday yesterday, so he got to celebrate a little bit.
There you go.
So he got some vindication in the end. Yes, tax reform was needed somewhat. Again, they haven't talked on this intergenerational wealth. Is an inheritance tax going to come up? But yeah, more losers than winners. So I feel like that's the state of play with this budget.
Yeah, okay, fair enough too. Look, for mine, there's probably a couple of points that I probably want to raise. I think from my perspective, I think it's incredibly brave by the government to want to make these changes. I think these are hard changes. They're not easy. And, one thing we've been very quick to do is be critical of the Albanese government, to say that they do nothing, that they're insipid, and that they're weak. Last night's decision to go out there and go, no, we're doing this, and we're doing it in these dates, and we're not going to an election, we're doing them now. From that perspective, I think is pretty brave. So kudos to them for doing that. The interesting thing that I'm finding is that when challenged before the election on these very points about whether or not these changes would apply there was a particular quote that Albanese had made where he said, for the 50th time, there won't be any changes to A, B, C. I think that's going to haunt him. And I think that's going to be a commercial which is played over and over and over again from that perspective. Now, in fairness, we live in a time where deceit, lying, and God knows whatever else by public officials and politicians has been normalised. So, I don't know why we're surprised, but, ultimately it's just going to be one of those things. Now, it's incumbent on them to prosecute the reasons for it. I think there are genuine reasons as to why you would make these changes. But at the moment, I know for mine, it probably feels more like a cash grab than it does feel like the reform side. So you feel like you've listened to one side of the record, but not the other side. When I listen to the full record, then I'll pass judgment properly, and that might be in the fullness of time. So that's probably the issue. I think the challenge for most people at this particular moment in time, when we think about what the government is trying to do, it's really important to just take breath and go, well, okay, how does this impact me? And the thing that's probably clear in my mind is that with the government changing the goalposts rather significantly, the need for advice and the need for having, a calming influence by your side, so you can actually make clear and informed decisions, is probably more important today than what it ever was.